One moment. And you're live. You're live.
Welcome to Life Mastery Radio, the talk show that brings you great thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. As always, I like to say today is another groovy day. That's because I make it that way. And there's a couple more reasons. I get to hang out with my good friend, Jackie. And Jackie and I get to hang out with really cool people that are on the cutting edge of thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. Before we get started, let's just take a minute and consciously think about getting centered and self-centered, not self-centered. That's the name of Jackie's book.
Yeah, it's good to be self-centered.
Just centered and situated. You know, I like to start off by thinking about what it is that I connect to. What is it that I get power from? It could be God, it could be Allah, it could be the dude, it could be the tree outside your window, but what is it that I find solace in? I think about that. Let's take in a deep breath. And then I like to let that breath out with just a big ah. And let my essence just flow up through my heart center, throat chakra, out of my speaker box and out into the universe, and consciously think about that connection. Let's do that one more time. This time, think about your dreams, visions, and goals. Here we are. We're down to 30 days left in the year 2021. Where did it all go? But what is it that you want to be, do, or have in 2022? Think about that. Some of your goals you want to start. We're going to talk about social entrepreneurship today. So maybe you want to make a social impact somehow. We're going to talk about that. So think about those dreams, visions, and goals. In with another deep breath. And then just out with another big let those dreams, visions, and goals flow out of your speaker box out into the universe. Now here's the deal. Allow the universe to make those come true for you. Those opportunities are coming your way, but here's what you have to do. You have to have your head up, tail out from between your legs, just like a little puppy dog, looking for those opportunities because they're coming your way. Trust me, that's the way it works. Try it. You'll like it. Hi, Jackie. How are you today?
I'm good. Happy belated Thanksgiving.
Happy birthday to you. Yesterday was your birthday. Happy birthday. I'd sing it, but I forgot the words.
That's all right. You don't have to sing it to me. Appreciate the sentiment anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's always a time for change, huh? I mean, you consider, I mean, I turned 60 this year and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then I go hang out with my mom and my uncles and all of those people for Thanksgiving. And I think, man, those people are older than me. And when I remember when they were 60, they were really old, and I don't feel that old. I think it's kind of cool.
It is funny how your perspective changes as you get older, right?
And then all the reminiscing too, right? At Thanksgiving, we thought back with my grandma, which would be my uncle's mother, and just things that we did and the things she did and made. And I mean, after Thanksgiving, she would take all the leftover turkey and make homemade turkey noodle soup. And then we would go back to grandma's house on Sunday after Thanksgiving and have that and visit some more. So yeah, there was a lot of memories that, you know, we kind of forget. We forget about those and we take them for granted, but yet when we recall them and mull over them and talk about them are some good times. It was really cool.
Yeah. It's funny how when you become an adult, those types of holidays, they can still be fun, but there's a lot more responsibility associated with them, and it takes away from the fun a little bit. So it is nice to relive some of those memories as a kid when life was a little bit easier and free.
You didn't
and
have to worry about the turkey or the cranberry.
Exactly, or the cost of all the groceries to make the meal, and you know, how you're going to fit everybody in around this little table and that kind of thing. You know, we didn't have to worry about those decisions.
Yeah, I guess we did have that because we always sat at the little kids table. right?
Yep.
Little kids had their own table off somewhere away from the adults. So
I know. I remember when I graduated to the adults table, it was a big deal.
wow, we're reminiscing and bringing back memories as we speak. Very cool. Well, how are things at the Speak Feed Lead Project.org?
Today is Giving Tuesday, everybody.
All
It's
right.
Giving Tuesday, and it's a day when you can support your favorite nonprofit. And as our guest is going to talk about today, make an impact in the world, a social impact with a nonprofit that you care about, that you're passionate about, or you want to support. And I just happen to know one. The Speak Feed Lead Project is
It's
a
a cool one.
501c3 organization. And so we are looking for partners and support and gifts today on Giving Tuesday. If you go to speakfeedlead.org, there is a link on the website for Giving Tuesday, and you'll hear some videos telling you why we do what we do, and some information, factual information about why your donation would impact children in the world today. So I hope you'll check that out for us.
And they do impact. There's nothing that you can, there's nothing that can compare to giving a young person a voice and teaching them how they can speak that voice. And it is amazing. You know, we're talking about social and environmental things today. I think those will come up. But Jackie and I had the opportunity to go to a speech contest by little kids, and that was big on their mind. They were speaking their voice about what they thought was going on in the world, and it blew me away. I was blown away, and I know Jackie was blown away because we talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Well, and many of those speeches were actually about social issues.
And these kids
so,
were what, 7, 8, 10?
yeah, they
12?
were little kids, but they were fully aware of what's happening around them on this planet that we all share. And it gives you a brand new perspective when you hear how they feel about things and what's important to them, what frightens them, or what they get excited about. And, you know, communication is the key, really, to making an impact in any way. You think about people that immigrate to this great country that we live in, and the advantages they have when they can speak the language. And communication is all about speaking your mind and being able to be understood by other people. So it is really the key to growth and change. And that was what we help kids to do at the Speak.
You watch those kids and you think, wow, I'm watching the future president. I think we were in Canada, so the future prime minister. I think that's when we were in Canada. Yeah. Well, very cool. I want to remind the listeners today that today's show page is at www.lifemasterradio.net or .com. You can go there. Any links that we talk about, there is a link to our guest already there. A little description about our guest, and there's a place where you can sign up for our newsletter. Jackie creates a newsletter every week, talks about who's coming on the show, who's been on the show, and a blog post about the show that we just had. So it's pretty cool. It's a great way to stay up to date with all things life mastery. You can check out Jackie's book, and my book has disappeared.
Did someone buy it from you?
Oh, here it is. I found it. Look at here's my book. You can check out my book, Jackie's book, and enjoy them. Leave us some feedback. It's really cool. Let's see. I think that's it. Sign up for the newsletter. Check out the books. Check out the web page. Check out the show page. And I believe today is Jackie's guest. So guess what? She gets the introduction.
I get to introduce our guest.
Jackie.
That's right. Thank you. Our guest is Alina Boyte, and you are going to enjoy hearing from her today. She is the founder and director at Changemaker Institute. I'm intrigued already. She is a Stanford law grad with a PhD in copyright law and history. Alina is now a tenured law professor at Mississippi College Law. She's also received multiple highly competitive academic awards, namely the Cambridge Commonwealth Scholarship, Fulbright, and Lieberman Fellowship at Stanford. Alina's genius is turning creative and innovative ideas into powerful products and services. that sell easily while effectively changing the world for the better. Businesses and entrepreneurs hire Alina to reveal the hidden impact in their business so they can make a difference in the world. She helps them design, develop, and implement a social impact strategy that maximizes impact and profitability, engage market and community, and opens new doors and sustains growth. Alina says, we can all be change makers and create an impact in the world. We need to start with who we are and how we want that change to manifest in the world. Then we choose the process that makes the most sense. Woohoo! I am excited to talk with her today. Please welcome Alina Boyte to Life Mastery Radio. Yay! It's nice to have you here, Alina.
Well, thank you, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
And I understand that you're in Mississippi. And how long have you lived in the South of the US?
Let me see. I took up the position in 2007. So I say 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Right out of school, came to Mississippi, never knew. I came from Malaysia. So I grew up in Malaysia and I went to school in England, went back to Malaysia, never been to the US before, and then came over to Stanford. So from the West Coast, San Francisco, I got offered this position to come to Mississippi, and Mississippi is nowhere close to a lot of the places, not close to the place that I grew up in, which is Kuala Lumpur, highly cosmopolitan, and definitely not like as diverse as the places I've been. So it was interesting coming to Mississippi and readjusting. But my husband is from Mississippi.
Oh.
He grew up in a town called Monticello with one traffic light. With one traffic light, and they only like since we got married, like within the last, I think 2 years, they got a McDonald's.
Oh, wow. So how did you meet then?
We met in Jackson, and he spent a lot of time in California as well.
Okay.
It's just that that he grew up in Mississippi, so his whole family is here. And after he finished, he went to culinary art school in California, and once he finished, he came back to Mississippi, and we met here, and it's so it was an interesting journey getting used to the South, but I like it, and we have a 6-year-old daughter now, and she attends a Montessori school in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi.
Cool. All right. Well, we've got a very interesting background as far as what you've studied, what you've learned. And I think what's most impressive about you is that you can take all of that now, and you're working on helping entrepreneurs and business owners to really do some amazing things with their own businesses. So tell us a little bit about the Changemaker Institute and what your mission is, or what you hope to create or cause to happen because of that. Yeah,
so the Changemaker Institute was founded this year in March as a public benefit corporation. So I don't know if many of your listeners tuning in are familiar with the different corporate structures, but a public benefit corporation, it fulfills a social mission while being profitable at the same time. So a handful of states.
It's different than a not-for-profit. Wow,
Yes.
I never heard that.
Yes, so you're absolutely right, Todd. It's not a nonprofit in that your purpose is profit-driven, but the social mission is incorporated into the Articles of Association. So, right. So I guess the primary benefit, the primary purpose of a public benefit corporation isn't shareholder wealth maximization. There are other social, goals written into the company's charter. So we are incorporated as a public benefit corporation, and the primary mission is to take a lot of what we know in academia and bring it to business. So I spent my whole life in academia. I'm still in academia, and I've never really left academia, never really left school. And what I've come to realize, being in teaching law and attending a lot of law conferences and conferences in academia, is that a lot of the things that we know And we talk about in academic circles, never leave the ivory tower. You know, it stays there. We talk about it there. We discuss and we debate, and then we go home and write books that, you know, only our mothers read.
Uh,
So business, I guess what you're saying is, so businesses never get that kind of inside scoop and that insight that you guys are talking about that could truly benefit them.
Exactly. At least not in the way that they can use, you know, and so there is so many models, you know, like we talk about things like the prisoner's dilemma, and, you know, we talk about cost benefit analysis, and we talk about, you know, social science and social structures and behavioral economics and all that. But it hasn't been conveyed to businesses in a way that they can think, oh, this is the way, you know, this is what the research say, you know, and this is how I can apply it in a practical sense, you know. And one of the things, one of the fundamental reasons why we have the Changemaker Institute is because, you know, social entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, Todd, earlier, is becoming a huge thing. It's not that huge. I mean, people are still learning about, you know, the idea that you can be a business and do good at the same time, you know.
And impact the impact society.
Mm-hmm. And
rather
impact
than-
society, right.
so it's interesting though that, you know, most businesses have been taught that they've got to please the consumer, right?
Yes.
That they're offering products, they're offering tools or resources for the consumer, and that becomes their focus. But
Yeah.
Alina, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're saying businesses can also have a completely separate perspective from that and say, but let's also help our planet. Let's also help the global population in some way, not necessarily with our products or resources, but in sustainable ways for, I don't know, our
Running a business.
growth on the planet, right?
Mhm. Exactly.
Wow.
And they don't necessarily have to be separate. Like you say, they can be very well aligned together. And so there is a company in Mississippi. It's like, you know, half an hour from where we live, and they sell bath bombs. You know, like you put the fizzle in the bath and it bubbles up. You know, the bath changes color. The water changes color. So they're based in Blackstad, near quite near to where I live, and that's what they do. They sell bath products. But the people that they employ in their factory, in their company, are marginalized women who have been in prison, women who have suffered domestic abuse, women who are in shelters. They are the people that they hire specifically. It's on their website. You know, Musee, this company, musee.com, if you go on their website, they actually have a video of that commitment. You know, and so when we talk about social impact, it's not something that is exclusively the responsibility or the purview of governments, right? Not ordinary people can have that impact, and ordinary businesses can have that impact by who they choose to employ, how they choose to treat their employees, who they choose to do business with, the business model that they use, right? These are all choices that entrepreneurs can make to create impact.
I can speak to that too, because I also own a machine shop, and I have a couple of felons that work for me. They served their time. They did what the justice system said they needed to do, and they are grateful to have a job, and they are loyal, they're honest, and they're just model employees. And I couldn't have. I've been blown away, and they've worked for me for a very long time. So I know exactly what you're saying. Those resources are available, and it makes a huge difference in society because, and I don't know if I want to say this way, but I'm gonna anyway, they're not reoffending, or they're not finding alternatives to help them sustain a productive life.
Yeah, and you know, to be honest, Todd, without you, the rate of recidivism, I'm not sure what the rate is in Canada, but it's pretty high. You know, if you don't have someone to take care of you once you leave prison, the rate of it's so easy to go back to a life of crime, because it's what you, that's the only thing you have, you know how to do, before, until someone like you comes along, right? Until someone like music comes along and gives people a stable environment. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So that's an instance. Give us some more areas that entrepreneurs could consider social entrepreneurship. What are some of the other areas that applies to?
Yeah, so absolutely, Todd. So do you know the brand Patagonia?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like my dream social impact company. But they are in the business of selling clothes. Like, I mean, they, everyone knows Patagonia is in the clothing company that sells, outdoor gear and outdoor
Right.
wear and, sweaters and all that. But they, inherent in their business model is this commitment to environmental preservation, right? So they used to have a different business slogan, but it's we are in the business of saving the planet. But you would never think that, well, why would a clothing company have that kind of mission? The way it's incorporated into the business is that they are very careful about causing no harm in the production of their clothes. So you think back about the distribution channels, right? The people who are actually putting the clothes together, right? Who they choose as the producer, right, of the material, and who they choose to work with. Those decisions, are handled very carefully so that eventually the product that is produced cause the least harm as possible.
Right.
And not only that, when it's produced, then you take the customer through a very carefully planned journey where when you buy the product, if it tears or something, they can send it back to Patagonia. Patagonia can repair it, right? And then when you want to dispose it, they have a way of collecting the clothes, and they can recycle it until it gets funneled through the process again, right? So it's taking very conscious decisions about what you want to do with your business and how you want to impact not just your customers, but people and the planet, right? And it's just a matter of being conscious. It's just a matter of being aware, of the different routes you can take, the different paths that are available to you as a business.
Well, and as a consumer who also wants to decrease their carbon footprint, right? When I'm given a choice between buying a coat from Patagonia or from another company, I'm going to look at the fact that, well, if I buy a coat from Patagonia, I'm also going to be contributing to the health of the planet because of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I can feel better about that decision because I know that I'm not going to be causing harm either, because I'm buying from a company who says we don't cause any harm. And so that makes it really cool. And I know that it's probably every day there are more and more businesses opening their eyes to this kind of thinking, right? Because we are so conscious about global warming and keeping our oceans clean and that type of thing. So how do you begin working with a company to decide what steps they can take to start on this journey?
Yeah, so to start on the journey, let's just say they are a brand new company and they suddenly realize, okay, this is something that's important to us, right? It's important to our identity and we need to start thinking about impact. The very first thing we need to do is really get clear on what impact looks like for them, right? So what impact looks like. My path to creating impact is going to be very different from you and different from Todd, right? Because when we come to impact, the decision to make an impact, it's usually because we've observed something or we've seen something or we want to make a difference that's unique to us, right? So with a company, you start with, well, what's your identity and why are you drawn, to this impact work? So you start by getting really clear And then you start kind of planning the way in which you want to create impact. So Patagonia, maybe, we want to address the environment, right? Muse, maybe we want to address marginalized communities, right? With the Changemaker Institute, we want to connect people with important information that could help them make a difference, right? So different people will come to impact work differently. You want to start with, well, let's look at your strengths and let's look at your weaknesses, and well, what, where are you positioned in the market and how do we go about creating that change? And you want to start with a very specific idea about the change you want to see, right? The outcome. What kind of outcome do you want to see? And usually an impact, we know that an impact is the end goal, right? We know this is where we should go when it's good in itself. There's no, when we can address something like, like giving someone who came out of prison a good job, that's an end in itself. No one is going to question and say, well, that's not a good end. Do you know what I mean? So the impact has to be good in itself. And things like, addressing things like poverty, addressing things like hunger, or addressing things like environmental sustainability, those are good things in itself. And if you want to look at a really good model of, things that are good in itself, like the end impact, the ultimate outcome that you want to target your activities toward, would be the Sustainable Development Goals. And I know that in your promotional material, you had like a wheel with the Sustainable Development Goals. No one is going to say, well, we shouldn't solve poverty. There are other priorities, right? No one's going to say we shouldn't care about hunger. Let's focus on, those are things that are good in itself. So once we know what the outcome we want to get to, this is our identity, this is where we want to go, then you want to really start thinking about, well, how do we do that? We know what our ends are, right? How do we get there? You kind of want to maybe reverse engineer and kind of think about, well, what's the means to get to that end? And the means to get to that end is really 4 things, right? If you could change any one of these 4 modalities, then you can actually create change at a systemic level, like a very fundamental level. If you can change laws, if you can change norms, if you can change markets, and if you can change architecture, right? So norms would include things like culture as well. But if you could change one of these 4 things, then the change that you see is much more sustainable. And a lot of people come to social impact thinking, okay, I want to make a change, but they don't have a process to go about creating change. It's
Right.
like I feel good. I know this is what I feel called to do. I feel like I want to do good things in the world. But how do I go about preserving the environment, right? Or how do I go about, addressing something like diversity, right? And sometimes, that opportunity falls on your lap, like Todd, I don't know how you got connected with the people that you hire, but maybe it just came about in a natural, organic way, right? But for most people who kind of like, decide I want to create impact, it has to be a little bit more intentional. Like you have to kind of look for the people to work with, right? So for a company that decides one day, okay, our ultimate goal is we want kids to we want to empower kids. We want to focus on education, right? We want to teach them how to speak well. And then the question is, well, how do we do that? They need to find someone like you, maybe Jackie, who they can partner with, right? So that partnership will help them get to their ends, right? But the way in which you get to that end would be, for example, maybe changing norms, right? Or maybe giving them maybe you guys may create a program where you can provide the architecture, the infrastructure where kids can speak, or the platform, right? Or you could create a new market where kids can have the opportunity to speak, and it could be any one of these 4 things, right, put in place can actually create the outcome that you've identified as important to you as an individual.
Mhm.
or to the company.
I don't
Wow,
think
so
I've ever
there's-
seen Jackie lean in so much.
Well, I'm thinking about it because I realize that it's not just enough to have a mission statement that says this is what we're about. But as you say, Alina, there has to actually be steps and actions taken that start to form the correct partnerships with organizations that can help you meet that end. For instance, I've always said that our programs really want to help the kids that are in foster care, the kids that are in incarceration centers, the kids that are in homeless camps, the kids who are coming out of trafficked rescues and need to be rehabilitated to get back into society. So it's not just enough to say that's who I want to work with, but as a business now, I need to find individuals within those organizations that are willing to hear what we have to say and find ways that we actually feed each other with these opportunities, right? Because that's how it's going to literally make an impact, but it's also going to be able to help other people understand how we plan on making the impact, not just words anymore.
Ultimately, we can't forget that, right, Alina, is growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another way of saying it, Jackie and Todd, is that you don't want to, you want to be transformational and not just informational. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the transformation comes to making very conscious decisions about who you decide to work with, which company you decide to partner with, right? What is the outcome that you would want as an organization, and how do you get to that outcome? And that then becomes your identity. It's not this, it's not this impact thing that's like out there. It's integrated in who you are as an organization, and definitely who you are as an individual. Because if a lot of people do impact work without considering the outcome and how they're going to get to that outcome, right? So for example, a lot of people may say, okay, we care about diversity, so we are going to hire minorities, right? Or we're going to let more minorities into our program, but doing that doesn't necessarily create the impact that you think you're going to create, because you haven't changed norms, right? You haven't changed the fundamental structures that are keeping people from getting to that goal. You know what I mean? So I've had so many conversations with people. We are hiring minorities, but they're not moving up the corporate ladder, right? So the thought is, while we want to create impact, we are going to be a more diverse company, but the people that they hire never get to a board position or never get to the C-suite, right? Because there are norms in place. Somehow the processes and the norms work in such a way that this, if they're good enough for you to hire, they should be good enough for you to groom and then promote, right? So what I'm saying is, a lot of people think that once we do what we think is necessary to create the impact, it's going to happen. It's not necessarily the case. The means has to connect with the outcome that you want to achieve.
Sounds like our federal government needs to consult. I'm thinking they can.
Yeah. And Alina, you remind me how frustrating it's been as a nonprofit to apply for grants, because a lot of these organizations who are providing funding through grants have this language that's kind of unclear when they talk about who are the people that you are trying to teach or reach or whatever. And it's all about diversity right now. That is the buzzword of 2021 is diversity, right? And so you're applying for this grant, and you're showing the diversity that you have, or at least that I have within my students and organization, but it doesn't ever seem to be enough. And now I understand it's because they're only focusing on the one thing, but there's no way they can actually
assess.
that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what's frustrating is that I'm not eligible for a lot of these grants because whatever they view as diversity is different than what I'm doing to be diverse. And
Yes.
it's really hard to make that connection with the money. So
Yes.
I can
And-
see why.
Right, exactly. So funding is a huge issue, right? So you're applying for funds, and then suddenly when you come to the application form, you see a question, right? What's your theory of change, right? And it's hard to articulate that, or it's even hard to even hypothesize about your theory of change unless you know your method of getting to that change. You know, so in your situation, for example, you might say, well, I have all these students, right? And X percentage of them are minorities, right? Or girls, right? Or whatever. What they're probably thinking is, well, how is that contributing to a more diverse institution, right? So a better way to say we have X number of students who are progressing in our company or in our institution. Well, we've recruited 10 people into our company and 5 are moving up the C-suite, right?
Right.
Or we've trained 100 students and 50 of them are presenting at national competition. Because what that shows is that you've talked to people and you've created a path for them where none existed before, and that's how you actually show your impact, right? But today, all of us are just collecting data. We are so data driven that the qualitative contribution is not captured. You know,
That's a great way to put it. Is they're just looking for data, but they're not actually able to define impact.
Or bonus points, right? Or a talking point.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm making a big impact, but they're only looking at the data and they're not being able to see how the impact is related to that data. So yeah, that answers a lot of questions for me. So so you've talked about to make these changes, it's got to be changes in law, changes in norms, changes in markets, changes in architecture. And boy, in the last almost 2 years now of this pandemic, we've seen tremendous change, breaking all of the rules in every situation of those 4 areas. So are you seeing the businesses who have survived the pandemic, are they more likely to be thinking more of a global impact, or are they less likely to be thinking about that now? What have you noticed?
I think they are more likely to think about global impact. So during the pandemic, I cannot remember the statistic off the top of my mind, but a lot more people were more conscious about how they spend the money, right? And if they had a choice, they would spend it with a socially responsible company as opposed to, one that didn't care. But having said that, I would be very careful about, I would qualify that, right? So if you're a social impact company and you want to create impact, you don't want to charge $30 for a pair of socks, right?
Right.
And then, sell it as, buy one and we'll give one free to someone who needs a pair of socks, because no one's good. Your business model has to be congruent with your impact work. You know what I mean? You cannot just transfer the entire cost of the impact onto your customer or your consumer, because that's why it's not going to be sustainable, right? So the flip side to what we do at the Changemaker Institute is to think about that. Who's going to pay for the cost of the impact work that you're going to do? It has to be equally shared, I think. You'd have to bear some yourself, but obviously it's okay to transfer some of it to the public. And the question is, well, how do you figure that out, right? How do you make that
Percentage?
You could do a percentage, or you could do what I mean by transferring is the sock model. I think it was Bombast, the company, right? It's not sustainable. I mean, no one's going to pay, well, unless you are within the top 1%. This is something that's really important to you.
Yeah.
Then you would be target. So the company would then have to target at 1%. They shouldn't be targeting the rest of us who wouldn't spend $30 on a pair of socks. right? So maybe with them, the business model is really changing their communication, right? Who are they talking to? Who do they want to draw into their, as customers, right? And maybe they should target the 1%, right? Then that model will be sustainable. But if they're
Right.
targeting the rest of us, it's not a sustainable business model.
So that's another part of the equation you have to figure out then is who is your target market, and how are they going to help you meet your goals?
Yes, who's going to pay for the impact?
Right.
to put it, in a way that's easily understood. Yeah.
There's so much to know. No wonder you're you're becoming successful, and it's almost like you have the knowledge. But if people want to know more, you have an event coming up and you have a website. Tell us a little bit. So if I signed up for your webinar on Monday, what kinds of things would I come away with?
Yeah, so we are having what we call the Changemakers Lab on Monday. And this is a brand new to market workshop. So it's not really a webinar. It's actually structured as a workshop. And the reason why we call it Changemakers Lab is like with a lab, you go in with some preconceived material, and then you do experiment, and then you come up with you record your ideas and everything, and then you walk away with that information. That's how it's structured. So it's structured as a workshop where we will provide a workbook for them to think about some of the things that we discussed today, right? What does impact look like to you? How do we get that impact? Do we target laws, right? If we target laws, then if we want to change laws, who are the people that is going to help us? Is it the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, right? Or if this is our goal, who do we work with? Would we reach out to Jackie? Would Jackie be a good partner to work with, right? And so we get them thinking about their individual conception of what impact looks like. We get them to craft their own impact story that they can then tell investors, right? That they can then put up on their website. This is what our impact story is, where we take them through, what led them to think about impact and how they see themselves going forward. What kind of metrics would they use, to show that they are creating impact? And then from there,
where can they how can they sign up? Is it at Alina? Your website's alinaboyte.com, is that correct?
It's actually, so Alina Boyte is a personal website. The Changemaker Institute, you would go to www.changemakerinstitute.org.
And there they can find out more about this lab and sign up for it.
Yes, absolutely. I did also want to mention that we are so confident about the value that this lab will provide that we actually do offer like a 100% money back guarantee within 48 hours of the event. If anyone comes and feels like, well, this is not, I didn't get any value from this, it's not something that I learned anything from, more than happy to.
So who should attend it then? What are the types of people that should be attending this workshop, Alina?
People who are doing work with change, people who are trying to conceptualize change, people who are looking for funding and not able to answer that question, what's my theory? What's your theory of change?
Yeah.
People who are trying to communicate to their stakeholders. This is what, stakeholders, shareholders, customers, people that they work with. This is my vision of change, and this is how I'm going to get there. Entrepreneurs who want to do social change, consultant and coaches who are teaching people how to think about change. You definitely want to attend this workshop.
So it's beneficial for people who have businesses now, but it's just as beneficial for people who might be considering starting a business.
Yep. I guess the commonality, the people that we are actually targeting are people who are actually thinking about change, and trying to communicate in a way that is both persuasive, powerful, convincing. This is our way of doing change. This is our theory of change,
Right.
I avoid the word theory of change because it makes some people think of a model. There's actually a model called the theory of change, where you have to go through like a hypothesis and all that. What I'm trying to say is people who are actually thinking actively about change should attend this workshop.
Okay.
So I have a scenario. I just want to pick your brain, and I'm not looking for all of the answers, but maybe you could say, okay, this is what you would consider. So I already told you that I own a machine shop. I have a couple fellows working for me, and there is a major tech company in our area that I do work for. But they will not allow me to send those employees to work on their job site. So where would I start with? I don't want to become an activist. I don't want to, but where would I start? Which direction would I go to begin to look at how I could change that? Because it's very unfair. And I'm really shocked that it is even part of a corporation in our society today.
Let me ask you, Todd, would you be willing to take a stand and say, okay, if you have that position, then I won't do business with you? Are you in a position to say that?
Yeah, but I'm just a little guy compared to the bigness of the
them?
guy.
Yeah.
And they would just find somebody else.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk a lot about within our community and within the program is having courage to actually take a stand, because sometimes we have to take a stand. So it depends on how that looks to you. So maybe courage may be, sending them a dossier of, these are the people that I have, and this is how good they are, right? I would vouch for them, give them a guarantee. If anything goes wrong, I'm willing to stand behind these people, right? Assuming that you are, right? That's one way, right? But it's really, besides being clear, besides being creative, courage, I think, is really important when it comes to social impact work, because you have to take
no
a
fear,
stand.
right? So I'm a little guy. You talk
Mhm.
a lot about being fearless, I think, and I'm just a little guy, and they're a big guy, and so that might help in my decision making of being afraid of the big guy.
I will say this, Todd. When I first started the Changemaker Institute, I was terrified because here I am. I'm a law professor. I'm within the academy. What will people think of me? People would think that why is she doing that? Is she out there on the And I was really scared. And for and when over the summer I ran a series of roundtables where I invited people in social impact to come talk. And I was terrified because I was afraid, what if my colleagues saw this and what would they say? And I'm just me, and there's the whole legal academy and they would judge me.
So you're human, right?
Right. But I did it one step at a time. And now I found a way to integrate everything I know in academia with what we're doing at the Changemaker Institute. It didn't come overnight, but as you overcome one small fear, you get a little bit braver. You overcome another fear. Now I couldn't at that time because I felt so scared. But now I can say, well, yeah, I learned everything that I've told you today. I learned at Stanford. It's not, I didn't come up with it. I learned it from people who taught me. And I feel comfortable saying it now, and I couldn't 6 months ago.
Very cool. You're
So
on.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say, Alina, is that if we truly want to have an impact, it requires change, not only in what you mentioned, the laws, the norms, the markets, and so forth, but in us.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
And that we need to find the courage, as you say, to stand up for the change we want to make. We may make some enemies that way, or we might lose some jobs that way, or some partnerships. But hopefully what we're doing is creating better and stronger partnerships in the direction that we actually want to be going.
Yeah.
Right?
And to be honest, Jackie, I don't think you necessarily will lose jobs. I think people respect, this is what I think. I think people respect someone who takes a position. I do. But of course, you don't do it in a way where you offend people, or you come across as this. One thing I don't want people to come across, with our work, is to come across as being tree huggers, or like we're in the space where we want to change. I want it to be concrete, and if you can come at the issue by providing value, by saying, these are the people that work with me, and they are good people for all these reasons, right? He's showed up at work every day at the right time. He's never taken anything from my company. And when you can take a stand, I think people will respect you. I don't think you will lose
No, I get that,
friends.
because that's the way I am. And I think even though they're a big corporation, there are people in seats that
Mhm.
at least would lend an ear and consider things.
And human. You need to, when you do social impact work, I think you need to appeal to the human being,
Yeah.
who one day might be impoverished, who will need a helping hand one day, maybe not, but you want to appeal to human nature, because we to be honest, collectively, we are in it together, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, ladies, we only have about 5 minutes left. Alina, did you have a blast today?
I did. I so did, Todd. I
I
so
hope
did.
you'll come back, because there's a lot more to talk about. You've got a lot in that head.
too.
that preload. Is there one last parting shot, one last thought or idea or anything else that you want to say?
Yes. Never outsource your mission in the world to someone else,
Mm.
because only you can do it.
Now, what does that look like? Because that sounds scary. To me, as I hear you say that, I was like, yeah, that's true. That's very inspirational. But could I actually make change that would be meaningful for that? And so when
Right.
you're working with a business or an organization, how long does the process take? Is it a system that is pretty well outlined and it's kind of the same for everybody? Or is it something that is created specifically for each type of business that you're looking at?
So maybe another way of saying it is each one of us. So I know business, and you can outsource like impact work, you can outsource it to people. But what I mean is your impact. How you say, what you say, how you think, what you think. You need to own it. You cannot, the way you teach your kids to speak, you cannot outsource that. Everything else you can, right? But it's something that's core in you.
Yeah.
That you need to own in order to be really effective in creating impact. So I don't mean like you can never hire people to help you, or
Right.
I
was just saying this to my husband yesterday. I finished a class last night with a group of kids, and I said, oh my gosh, this is what I love. This is what I wish I could just do all day long, is the teaching part, the engagement with the youth. That's what I love about what I do. But I hate all the little business things I have to pay attention to, and all the material, the marketing that I have to do, and the selling of myself to
all that you outsource.
I know, but that's what I think I need to do, is figure out ways to outsource that so that I can really do what I'm passionate about doing.
Which is your impact.
Yeah. All right, we got to get together.
You might see Jackie at your class at the lab.
Yes, we would love to have Jackie.
Come to the lab on Monday.
Yeah.
Any takeaways, Jack? Jackie, I was watching you during the show, and it's just like, oh my gosh, the wheels were turning. And
well, it's because I believe every word she's saying, and for me, it's like ringing true. I know that this is part of the puzzle that I've been missing, because I've been trying to sell the program, right? Which is a great program. I have written and developed amazing curriculum, and I see tremendous progress in our kids. But what I think I'm missing, Alina, is the purpose for people to see the impact that it's actually going to make. That's I've tried to voice that, but I don't think I'm doing a very good job. So I think, as I'm
Talk to me,
listening to you, it's
Jackie.
like, yes, we've got to figure out how to make more impact.
Talk to me, talk to us. We have an impact director, we have strategy. Talk to us.
I will do that for sure.
I'm sure you're going to hear from it. That's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show, Alina. It was
I did. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
This was such a treat.
much for showing up as you. Lastly, here's the deal. Please, please, please choose to go and check Alina out. Even if you just have that little idea, look at the gears turning in Jackie's head. She's just like all over this. I know how I'm going to do some things different. That's what she's thinking. And please make it a great day, because just like I said, it's all about choice. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. Thanks, Alina.